Good morning, guys. I hope your day is starting off well. It's a new day, so of course there's new developments in the ongoing trade dispute between the United States and Canada, and now the United States and a large portion of the rest of the world. I was going to talk about a lot of non-tariff retaliations that are going on, but there's one that's so serious and so specific here. I'm going to concentrate on that. And this one tears at the very fabric of the relationship, particularly with Canada and the US, and it may spill into Europe. And it is this, okay? Let me paint the picture here. Our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, who has now resigned, we have a new Prime Minister who was sworn in last Friday. His name is Mark Carney. Things unfolded in the open, but maybe were not apparent to people that were watching exactly what was going on. But in the last couple of weeks of Justin Trudeau's leadership, he made a point of going to Europe and meeting with European leaders. And then he's resigned, he's gone now, and our new Prime Minister was sworn in on last Friday. And he's immediately off to Europe to meet European leaders. And before he went to Europe, I guess he was briefed, because on the first day or the second day on the job after he was sworn in, one of the first things that he did is he instructed our defense minister, Mr. Bill Blair, and I'm going to read it to you. Prime Minister Mark Carney has asked for a review of Canada's plan to purchase a fleet of F-35 fighter jets. And a spokesman from the Defense Department, Mr. Blair, said Carney has asked Blair to look at whether the F-35 contract is in the best interest for Canada or whether there are better options. The deal with Lockheed Martin and the US government is for 88 planes at a cost of $85 million per plane. That's not the total cost. The total cost of the project would be, according to our parliamentary budget officer in Canada, he said the total cost of the deal to fly and maintain the new fleet of F-35s would be an estimated $74 billion with a B. A 2023 report estimated the acquisition cost would be about $20 billion, including $10 billion for 88 planes, $2.1 billion for weapons and ammunition, and another $6 billion for elements like design and depot and infrastructure and training. And then there would be future spending on software updates to the planes, which would happen in the United States. So it's a big deal between the two countries. And this, let me just step back here, because there's always been a little bit of like a tug of war between the United States and Canada. The United States demanding that Canada spends more on defense. And there is that 2% of GDP target for NATO members to spend on defense. And Canada's always been lower than that. And one of the kind of negotiating things that goes on behind the scenes is that typically with defense spending in Canada, when you're talking about large numbers like that, it involves buying equipment, buying weapons, buying hardware like F-35 fighter planes. And usually, in almost every case, when Canada has to make a major defense purchase, it's the government-to-government deal, and then Canada purchasing the hardware from the US, made in the US. So a large portion of Canada's defense spending is a direct injection into the US economy, because we buy our military equipment made in the USA. And it is like that for a reason, because a lot of the most high-tech weaponry, and in the case of these F-35 planes, the software that controls the planes, it is all proprietary to the United States. It's not shareable because of national security reasons. We cannot build them ourselves. We do not have, the United States will not allow us to upgrade the software and do it in-house. It all has to go through the US. So it's kind of you can understand there's a lot happening behind the scenes that people don't know. And politicians usually cherry pick slogans and numbers and exchange insults. But what happens behind the scenes is very complicated. This is a big deal that's, as I just went through the numbers, pushing $100 billion just on this one deal to buy F-35s. And I'll read you here Our defense minister, after he was asked by the new prime minister, he said, "We need to do our homework given the changing environment and make sure that the contract in its current form is in the best interests of Canadians and the Canadian Armed Forces," our defense minister said. He continues to say that the direction I've been given by the Prime Minister is to go and look at our options and other options to make sure that we make the right decision for Canada. Now this, in politics speak, is very serious, okay? There's different, politicians and countries have different ways of saying things. And I know in the United States, the way things are communicated now is by tweet or by just threats and insults. And the US president has over and over and over again now talked about wanting Canada to become a 51st state and annexing Canada. And that's not gone over well in Canada. There's an overwhelming rejection of that idea to the point where, how should I describe it? I don't want to inject my own inflammatory rhetoric into the conversation here, but I think it's safe to say that, let's try and find an analogy. The Canadians in general feel like we have been backstabbed by a close friend. Right? Think of it that way. And I'm not talking about tariffs, because we've been through tariff negotiations and tough negotiations with the Americans in the past. In fact, with Donald Trump as the president in 2018, there were tariffs imposed on Canada, and then discussions and deal making. So that's not what I think has changed public opinion in Canada. What really triggered the big change was this talk of annexation, and Canada should become the 51st state. As soon as that happened, it was like a friend had backstabbed Canadians. And at first, the reaction was, well, let's see if we can try and fix this. Let's see what's made our friend upset. Let's try and work with them. Let's try and change the president's mind. Time has gone by and the rhetoric hasn't stopped from the White House. And so now I think the public opinion in Canada and political opinion in Canada has shifted from let's try and change the president's mind to, all right, we've lost our best friends, so now we need new friends, to continue the analogy. And hence the trips from our prime ministers, the last outgoing Justin Trudeau and the new Prime Minister Mark Carney heading to Europe. That is hugely symbolic, because traditionally a new Canadian Prime Minister, the very first phone call he would make after becoming the Prime Minister would be to phone the President of the United States, and the very first state visit would generally be to go visit the President of the United States. Mark Carney was sworn in on Friday, and within a day he's off to Europe and he's meeting with the leader of the United Kingdom, the leader of France, and other European leaders. So let me go on here, because there's more to the story. Now, Canada's announcement to review the F-35 purchase came a day after Portugal announced that it was also reconsidering purchasing the F-35s. Portuguese Defense Minister Nuno Melo, I hope I'm saying his name right, told local outlet Publico on Thursday that he was wary of replacing older US-made F-16s, which Portugal currently has, with the F-35s in the wake of President Donald Trump's recent policy shifts. Melo, Portuguese's defense minister, said Trump's unpredictability with regard to his stance on NATO meant Portugal had to weigh other options, adding, "We cannot ignore the geopolitical environment in our choices." Now, Canada, Portugal, and perhaps other European countries that are looking at upgrading their air forces are now considering the Swedish Saab. It's called the JAS-39E, the Gripen, which is the natural runner-up and a possible replacement for the F-35s. Now, this deal between Canada and the US, Canada has committed to buying 88 F-35s. And as it stands right now, payments for the first 16 have already been made, and Canada is expecting delivery of the first 16. There's 72 aircraft remaining in the deal, and it's those 72 that could be in jeopardy and replaced by the Gripen. Now, shortly after our new Prime Minister announced this review of the F-35 purchasing contract, leader of another party in Canada, the NDP, leader Jagmeet Singh announced on Sunday that his party would cancel Canada's contract to buy the US F-35s completely, no questions asked, and he stated purchasing from the United States at this time is not in our national security interest. And I know the immediate reaction from a lot of people would be to say, well, ignore this guy. He's never going to become the leader. He's way down in the polls. He's irrelevant. But let me again point out that things are much more complicated. There's a lot of different nuances and different scenarios that could unfold. There will be an election in Canada shortly, and it is possible that the result could be, guys, I'm not supporting one or the other, or using inflammatory rhetoric or trying to tell you how to vote or what to think. I'm just saying there is a possibility that the Liberals win the election, but do not gain the majority of the seats, similar to what is the situation now. And if it were the case that the government after our next election is a Liberal minority, they may once again have to make a deal with another party, which would very likely be the NDP. And then you would have a Liberal party who has called for a review of the F-35 contract, and an NDP party who has called for just cutting it off and not even doing a review. If it's a Conservative government that wins a majority, the NDP is irrelevant. If it's a Liberal government that wins a minority, the NDP is very influential. So we'll see how that shakes out. Now, this, of course, would really affect business for the company Lockheed Martin. And in a statement, Rebecca Miller, who is Lockheed Martin's Director of Global Media Relations, said, Lockheed Martin values our strong partnership and history with the Royal Canadian Air Force and looks forward to continuing that partnership into the future. Foreign military sales are government-to-government transactions, so anything further will be addressed by the US and Canadian governments. So they're taking the stand. Well, we're going to wait and see. So that's a bit of the news. How many Americans viewing had any idea that this kind of stuff was going on behind the scenes? And so now if we try and kind of just think about this a little bit, yes, this is an issue that's going to affect trade, and it's going to affect money would have been spent in the United States, and it's going to affect some companies, and it's going to be have an economic impact. But more importantly, this is getting to the point now where it's tearing at the very fabric that binds our nations. Canada and the United States, NORAD, the North American Defense System, the integration of our air forces, the United States' role within NATO, the military-industrial machine in the United States that builds most of the weapons for a large part of the world, that business, that connection. It's so complicated that it would be impossible for me to foresee what could happen. And this is the trap that we all fall into. Okay, and that's what I'm trying to do on my channel, is not just read a headline, pick up my phone, read something for 7 seconds on TikTok, and then do an inflammatory video about it. Because I guarantee that it's impossible for any of us to contemplate all the potential eventualities and things that could happen and how this will move forward. Because it's very, very complicated. The relationship, the connection, the economic connection, the military connection, the friendship connection. This is all changing as we speak, and it's very complicated. There's a lot of emotional reactions that could just blurt out of people's mouths. Let's say it that way. But on this channel, what I'm trying to do is just present the information, and maybe you could just think for yourself, what does this mean? But it should be obvious to everyone that this kind of stuff, that this is true. I can say that this is absolutely true, this statement. That had the US not started talking about annexing Canada and talking about Canada being the 51st state, I don't think there would have been any discussion on potentially canceling this contract. Okay? This is a direct result of the changing policies of the United States. And Canada and Portugal have announced it. Europe as a whole has already realized that they need to take more responsibility for themselves as far as military spending. Will they change where they source their hardware. The whole fabric of not just trade, but because there's trade and then there's military spending. That whole system is changing before our very eyes. And I'm interested in from you guys to leave some comments. Let me know what your thoughts are, what you think. But I thought I'd just zero in on this particular one. There's many other non-tariff retaliations and readjustments that are happening as we speak. And I'll probably do a video on those in the next couple of days with respect to Canada and the United States, because there are many that Americans probably don't know about. But I wanted to just zero in on this one because this is a big one. And I'll close with this because when you talk about the political intrigue and what is happening, our Prime Minister has been on the job as I record this. I'm recording this on Monday. He's been on the job since Friday, so Saturday, Sunday, Monday. He's only been on the job for 3 days. He announced this, I think, on Saturday or Sunday. So one day after taking office, and our new Prime Minister was not an elected MP. He was a civilian. He walked into the job on Friday and immediately ordered this review of the F-35 contract, the fighter jet contract. He must have been briefed. The government, this must have been something that was being discussed and prepared and ready, this reaction. He didn't just show up and say, hey guys, I got a great idea. Let's not buy the F-35s from the Americans. Dum, 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 dum. You know, this is... he made the announcement immediately. He was sworn in, he was briefed, and this is one of the first things that came out of his mouth. So there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes. Governments around the world that are repositioning themselves in the world now, okay, because of what's going on. That's all I got for you today, guys. Leave some comments, subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to present you information that you might not hear on regular media, or if you do, it might be kind of presented with inflammatory rhetoric one way or the other, as a clickbait, sensationalized headline. I'm trying to kind of put it out there and make you think, why is this happening? Presented in a way that maybe with a little bit of a Canadian perspective for some of my American viewers that you may not hear in the US. So let me know what you think, leave some comments, and I will catch you guys on the next one.